Christmas trees come in every shape and size. Hi, this is Kim with Mom's Creative Moments. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're creating another Christmas tree. I know we've done that a few times this season, but this is a different one, and I hope that it's one that you'll have fun with. Let's check out my workspace and we'll get started. Okay, so here's my workspace for today. We are using a variety of scrap papers, not whole sheets, of just kind of what I have left of some green designer sheets. And so pull out whatever you have that you think kind of goes together with greens for the tree. I'm using 2 pieces of white cardstock, that's bright white cardstock from CM. And then I've got these 2 pieces of winter Bliss that I saved specifically for a layout like this. So this is designer paper. It's got that sweater print on the back, but this side has more of a fast to fab feel with the snow falling down, and I'm so glad that I saved it because this is going to be perfect for our layout today. So I've got 2 sheets of that one, and I've got 4 other patterned papers. So you want at least 4 different ones. It's helpful if you can flip them over and use the back side. Not completely necessary, but it is helpful if you can flip them over and use the back side for a little more for variation. So keep that in mind. And we'll get started here in a second. I am doing another voiceover for this video because my sound got corrupted somehow during my initial recording. So I apologize if my hand movements don't coincide with what I'm telling you. I honestly don't remember what I was trying to explain or share, and so I don't remember why I'm gesturing the way I am. It's just kind of one of those goofy things. Hopefully, you are patient enough to deal with the wackiness of this. All right, so first thing we're going to do is start with our base. And so I'm going to use my trimmer, and we're going to get started with a frame. I'm going to go ahead and grab my 12-inch trimmer, and we are going to make a 1-inch frame with this white cardstock. I'm going to keep both of those sheets stacked on top of one another. If you've never made a 1-inch frame or an outer frame for your page, take a look at the Scrapbooking 101.5 Big Frame Up video. Use that link, and that'll take you to one of my videos that explains how to make one of these frames. We're just going to speed it up here real quick, so you don't have to sit through the making of this particular frame. But they're not too terribly difficult if you've never made one before. Just jump over there and watch that video real quick, and you'll see how quick and easy they are. So that's going to be the edge on both of our pages. Then we're going to take these designer sheets, and we're going to trim off 2 of the edges. We're going to stack them so we can cut them both at the same time. And we're going to put them up against that lower shoulder of the trimmer and measure them out to the right. And we're going to cut off 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so 3/4 of an inch is going to give you a roughly 3/8 of an inch on all of your edges. 3/8 of an inch of the frame that we already cut is what you'll see. So you cut 3/4 of an inch off the right side, 3/4 of an inch off the top, and then you're left with an 11 1/4 inch square. And then we're going to go ahead and make these bases so that they are all good to go and ready. And so you're just going to center this. You can eyeball it, or you can measure and make it exactly precise, whatever makes you happy. I'm pretty good at eyeballing it, whether it's right side up or upside down. So I don't really worry about measuring make it exact, because it's usually pretty close, even when I'm just looking at it. So we've got our 2 base sheets. I'm going to now set these kind of aside for a minute, and we're going to work on the pieces of our Christmas tree. Now, even though that's a white background paper, there's enough green in it and some variation of the red in that holly up there on the top and this paper, that we're going to use both of those in our tree, and we're going to use this green side as well. So I'm going to want to get as many rectangles out of this as I can, and we're going to cut our scrap pieces into as many rectangles as we can, and they're going to be of varying lengths. I think when I did this, I had 4 that were 9 by 2.5, and this one was 3 by 4, and I used it. So you just want a variety of rectangles that you're going to then cut into triangles, okay? And there's no real way for me to tell you exactly how many you'll want to use, or exactly, which measurements or shapes or lengths to tell you need to have, because you can use many, many different sizes. So whatever your scraps are dictating are going to be your lengths, is fine, because you want a variety, okay? They should be roughly 2.5 inches wide by a variety of lengths, and I think the longest one I did was 9 inches. So between 4 or 5 inches and 9 inches long, and at least 2.5 inches wide. Okay, and you're going to need probably at least 8 or 9 different rectangles, if not maybe a few more than that, maybe more like 10 or 11. But I would start with 8 or 9 and see how large your tree is getting, and then try to determine if you need a few more or not. I wish I could be more precise than that for you, but it's just kind of impossible to do because of the way we are going to build this tree, and you're going to see that here in a few minutes. But you can see from the finished product, the thumbnail that you saw that brought you to this, that it does have a variety of different limbs, and they are all different sizes. And so it is just kind of a trial and error. And even when we get to the very end, we are going to do a lot of swapping around, because that's just what we have to do to make things fit correctly. Okay, so use your scraps and see what you can come up with. See how many rectangles you can get out of your scraps that are. Just make sure they're about 2.5 inches wide, and yeah, just make a variety of different lengths, and we'll have some fun arranging and playing with all those pieces. Those smaller rectangles that are up there at the top of my desk, top of the screen, are just sitting up there because I was thinking they were probably going to be too small and I wasn't going to be able to use them. And so we'll have to wait and see if they get used at the end, because honestly, I don't remember if I used them or not. But I kept them handy just in case, because like I said, I wasn't sure exactly. And the reason I wasn't sure is because the sample that I created using one color of cardstock. And what happened was all the pieces became kind of intermingled, and then it was very difficult for me to tell which ones were which. And so it was impossible for me to know what size rectangles to make in order to make my triangles. So So that meant that doing the video, things were a little bit more trial and error. And I think that's kind of going to be just the case. So use your scraps and and make sure you have quite a few. You can see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 so far. I'm going to create a few more so that we have at least 8 or 9. And I think I even ended up making another one when I was actually assembling the tree. So I think I had probably at least 10 different rectangles. Okay, now we're going to cut these rectangles into triangles, and we're going to cut from that upper left corner to the lower right corner. On each of these rectangles, that's what we are going to do. And it's going to leave us with quite a few triangles that we are going to then be able to use in our tree. And each branch on our tree is going to have 2 different papers. So that's why it's nice to have a good variety. And I really didn't worry about that one little corner that was a little bit not pointed that you just saw a minute ago, because it's easy to cover up that end that I had kind of cut a notch off of. So that was not critical. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to grab a couple of our pieces. I'm just going to show you here kind of how each branch is going to be assembled. You're going to put points together and you're going to leave just a little bit of a gap between the 2 pieces so that you can sort of see through it to underneath. Put the points together, but leave that gap in the center. And the top where the edges don't meet is not going to matter. Okay, so right now I am just sort of trying to find a spot on my mat that makes sense to go ahead and build this tree, because I don't want to build it on a piece of paper. I'm going to build it right here on the naked mat. And there's a reason for that. If you recall in the thumbnail, this tree gets cut apart down the center. So there's no point in building it on a mat. You do want to know your parameters though. So this is me building a 12-inch square on my mat so that I can tell how wide of a page I can work with, how wide I can make my tree, how tall it can be, so that I don't get too crazy with it and make it too big, because that would be super easy to do. So these sticky notes are going to help me stay within that 12 by 12 parameter of making my tree the right size. Now, I can totally see that some of you would get wild and crazy and make your trees super wide because you know you're going to be cutting them in half. And then you've got, a good sized tree on each side of your layout and maybe not as much room for photos, which would be totally fine to do if that's what you want to do. I think that would be really cool to try. And that really wasn't what I was trying to do here. So I was trying to stick with my 12 by 12 grouping. But it's fine if that's what you want to try and do. Okay, so I'm just, kind of showing you what my intention was, that the points in the bottom of the tree would go from corner to corner on that 12-inch span. And so any minute here, I'm going to realize that those 2 pieces of paper are the same and shouldn't be there, which is, I don't know. I think I was under some kind of crazy influence and not thinking straight when I first started this off, but it's okay. So we're just going to gradually put our papers together and lay them on top of each other and try to cover up the ends of those triangles. And so the angle that you place these on is rather important. So you don't want to make too horizontal of a angle, too low of an angle, because you want the flat ends of your triangle, you want those to be covered by the next pieces that are going to go on your tree, right? So that point that I'm pointing to right there needs to be covered by the next piece that's going to go across. So you don't want to make your limbs too flat. They need to be angled. Yeah, right here is where I realized, oh, I needed to have a different paper there. So don't mind me. I'm okay. Truly. So that one is going to become that lower branch, part of that lower branch. So I did use repositionable adhesive with this. That's critically important that you use repositionable adhesive. And you're going to just accept from the beginning that you are going to be assembling and reassembling and assembling and reassembling and adjusting this for quite a bit. So just know that that's what it's going to take to put this together. There is no way to give you exact instructions that are only going to take 5 minutes to assemble this. That's not the way this particular design works. So I apologize if that aggravates people, but that is just the nature of this creative process for this particular design. Okay, so we're just going to vary the papers and vary the patterns that we're putting together. I did try not to put 2 of the white background papers in the same arm of the tree, just because I felt like it balanced the white better to not do that. But you can make your tree as colorful or as monochromatic as you want it to be. You could use these other sides that have mostly red papers on them, and that would be fine. I was trying to go for more of a green tree with less red, so that's why I didn't flip more of these papers over and use the predominant red sides that you'll see as I flip things over occasionally. So that's going to be our base. You've got your 2 main triangles, and we're just going to work our way up, kind of shortening things as we go. So you're going to want to use shorter and shorter triangles, shorter and shorter rectangles that make shorter and shorter triangles as you move up towards the top of your tree. The higher on your tree that you get, the more difficult it becomes to try to cover the angles that you're trying to cover and still make branches that make sense and stay within the size range at 12 inches of the top of your tree that you're trying to stay within. So you get up here to the top and your bases of your triangles are a little wider than you need them to be generally. So, and a more narrow rectangle, so not 2.5 inches wide, but something more narrow probably would be helpful. And so if you wanted to, you could trim these down and and make them a little bit more narrow. But you can see that I took those two smaller pieces. Those are going to be my tops. So now I'm going to go back and try and adjust those arms down so that they are within the parameters of that I need them to be so that I can cover the top. So I think the solution I came up with was to layer these a little closer together and even overlap the two pieces of each arm just a smidge up here at the top to make it a little bit easier to cover the bases. Because once you get up here to the top, it does get just a little bit more tedious, more difficult to make this come together. This is my capstone kind of for the top of the tree. And I'm just going to sort of make that cover all of the extra little bits that are hanging on up there. Now you can always trim stuff off also. So if you still have bits that are, sticking out a little too far, just go in with your scissors and trim them off underneath. No one's going to know. I promise I won't tell anyone. And your tree will look spectacular and people will say, how in the world did you do that? And you can just say, well, I just had to have a lot of patience. And just leave it at that. Let them wonder. And I fussed and fussed and fussed with all of these, and really I should have just taken my scissors and just trimmed some of it down, and it would have been just fine. But I was really trying to make it work the way that it would have if it were fabric. But the point is here, it's not fabric. So you can move those papers around wherever you want them to go and make whatever pattern makes you happy, ultimately, right? So don't let this stress you out. If this part is stressing you out, don't worry about it. Just make your own arms of your tree however it makes you happy, okay? And it will look cute in the end, I promise. It'll look really cute in the end. There we go. Okay, so there's the top of my tree. And all of those pieces are just going to stay right where they are. I'm not going to adjust that any further. Okay. So, but what I am going to need to do is go back and add a little bit more adhesive. And you can see I have only 3 little triangles left that I did not use. So I used almost all of those 10 rectangles cut into triangles. So 20 pieces just about of different paper to make this tree. Okay, so, and I tried really hard to kind of spread out the different white background papers. I wish I had gotten a little more of that holly paper in there. I only had that one. So I was a little sad that I wasn't able to make that work, but it's fine. It's done, and that is the important thing, right? It's done. So now I'm going to lift it up off of my table, and you can see it's just a little bit stuck. So I'm going to be really careful how I detach it from my desktop because my repositionable adhesive has done its job and was holding it in place. And I'm going to now be able to go in and kind of lift up the different spots in the back and add a little bit more adhesive to kind of reinforce keeping all of the bits where they are supposed to stay. All right, so that's really an important step to take, is to go ahead and just add adhesive to all these different triangles so that they stay where they need to stay. And when you cut this in half, your tree doesn't completely fall apart because it's nicely solidified, nicely put together and adhered to it itself. Right? See? So it's all like one piece now. Okay, so now I'm going to grab my 12-inch trimmer. Well, first of all, I'm going to bring this down here and just show you. You can use this as a one-page layout. You can put your tree on one page and then work your photos in around those branches, which would be kind of cute, I think. Or you can do what we're going to do, and you can take your tree and cut it down the middle and use it on half of it on each page to make a 2-page layout. Okay, so your top of your tree, I want my top of my tree to be within the frame. And so that's what I was pointing at there. Mine got a little bit taller than it probably needed to be. So I'm going to do a little bit of trimming to make it fit because I want to put a star on the top of my tree. If you don't want to put a star on the top of your tree, then this is perfect. It will fit just nicely on your page. But because I want to put a star on it, I'm going to lower it down and trim off those lower branches just a little bit. And that will enable me to punch a star out and put that on the top. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and get this cut apart. So I'm going to put this in my trimmer, put the point up there on my cutting line on the top, and then just try to center it and keep it straight to be able to cut through all the way through all those different layers. Now, I mean, I am going to have to go up and down with my blade a few times to get through all those layers of paper, and I'll cut and I'll test it to try to see if it's separated, and I'll cut and I'll test it. But I had to excuse me, I had to have my blade go through it several times, you'll see here, in order to be able to cut that apart, because there were multiple layers of paper, especially up there on the top. And look at that. I didn't have mine fully secured. So that piece we really didn't need, so I won't just tossed it because you couldn't see it anyway. And that side was pretty well secured, but the other side we'll just have to anchor down just a little bit better. Somehow it did not get attached as well, which is okay. It's easy to fix, not a big deal. Okay, so I just lined it back up, lined up that triangle and the other triangles to get that put back in the right place. And then we can go ahead and secure this down on our base sheets. So I just added ample adhesive up the center, and then some adhesive on each of those arm pieces that are going out on the tree, each branch, so that those points would stay nice and secured down on my page. Okay, so then we're going to bring it in, and right up against the center, we're going to place that down so that it's balanced on each side of the page. So this is what I meant by, if you wanted to, you could make the arms of your tree a whole lot wider if you're making a 2-page layout, because those arms of your tree could expand all the way to the edge of that 12-inch page if you wanted. They don't have to, certainly, but they could if that's what you wanted to do. I had another triangle that wasn't quite as secure as I needed it to be, so just making sure that that's good to go. And then we'll go ahead and adhere this side of the tree. Lots of good repositionable adhesive just in case. Coming down on those points. And we'll get that put, again, down right on the center. I'm going to line up these two base sheets so that I can line my tree up exactly where it needs to go. Just like so. And then adhere that down to the base page. Okay. There are just a couple more pieces. I keep seeing pieces that I want to make sure are adhered. So going back in there with it with more adhesive to get those secured. Never a bad thing, especially when you're working with a piece that has so many different layers. All right, so we are going to, the next step is we're going to just trim the base of the tree so that it's in line with the shape of the page. And I've got my precision point scissors that I'm using to do this just because I feel like that it's easier to manage them. They're a little shorter than the other CM scissors. So a lot of times I reach for those first instead of the bigger, longer scissors. And it's okay that our tree really kind of touches the base of our page because some trees do that. They go all the way to the ground. So that's okay. This tree is not going to have any presents under it, not like our other tree that we made a few days back. This tree is just going to have photos around it, probably of our Christmas tree. When I was young, we used to go out and hunt for our trees and cut them down from in an actual forest or at a tree farm. And so when we would do that, our tree went all the way to the ground because that's how it grew. So this is a tree very much indicative of the ones that I grew up with. All right, so if you have the shooting star punch, I just happened to see that as I was gathering a punch to create the star for the top of my tree. A shooting star, it was a number of years ago, so if you don't have one, that's fine, and you probably won't be able to find one around. But this one, this open star, you might be able to still find. It came out a little bit more recently, but not. This one might also still be really hard to find. So just find any kind of star punch that you have, and that's fine. And then find some kind of sparkly paper. I happen to have this gold glitter paper that I use sparingly, and it is acid and lignin free, but I don't. It's not made by CM, and I don't use it very often, but I do use it occasionally, especially for stars. As you can tell, I've got a lot of stars punched out of that one sheet. I particularly like this punch because it gives you two stars. It gives you the open star that I'm going to use here for the top of the tree, but then it also gives you the star that it punches out of the center, which is kind of cool. You can make your star two-toned if you want, or you can just use one or the other. I'm going to use this open outer portion, and I'm going to place that on my tree. And then with my pages meeting up here in the center, it's really easy to center that star at the top of my tree. And then I'm just going to use my scissors. These are my longer scissors to go ahead and just cut that tree apart rather than trying to put it in my trimmer. I could do it with my trimmer, but sometimes it's just easier to just use your scissors. So went ahead and cut that apart. So those two pages are ready for photos. So putting our photos kind of around the tree, we don't want to necessarily cover up the printed snowflakes that are at the bottom. So I'm going to want some mats that are going to work within those sizes. These are the two papers that we cut out of the middle of our frame that went around the base of our pages. So we're going to utilize those pieces of cardstock, and we're going to, I'm not really sure what I was pointing at as I'm looking at this and talking about all those different shapes of branches of our tree, but we're going to cut a 4-inch wide piece from what's left from the inside of our page. And basically we have a 10.5-inch square to work with here. So then I'm going to take and I'm going to cut that 4 by 10.5-inch piece down to 5.25. Two 5.25 by 4-inch pieces. Okay, and those are our okay, we're saying it's 4 by 5. You can make them 4 by 5 also. That would be fine. But I think actually it was 4 by 5.25. But anyway, it's not too terribly important. The remainder of my paper here is 6 inches, so I'm going to go ahead and, so maybe they are 4 by 5. I'm sorry, my bad. So then I can make a 6 by 4 really easily to put there on the bottom. So we're going to make another 6 by 4 for the other side, and then grab the other square from the other cardstock that we gutted and make 2 more for the top. Those are 4 by 5. Okay, so we've got enough room for 6 photos. If you need more room, then you can cover up your tree a little bit more if you want. If you need your pictures to be more horizontal photos than vertical photos, then just adjust those mats to accommodate turning those top mats horizontal instead of vertical. All right. Now, the only other thing I would do rather than adding more embellishments to this is I would go ahead and get my white pen out, and I'm going to add some stitching to each of these triangles. So I'm going to just use my 0 centering ruler just because it's clear and I can easily see. And I'm going to just add a dotted line, a dashed line along the edge, about 1/8 of an inch in from each of the edges. And I'm going to, it's going to take a few minutes to do this ink work because we've got a lot of edges here. So through the magic of editing, we're speeding all this up, and it'll be like it just took moments. But do understand that it does take quite a while to go ahead and add all of the stitching in for these. It is not this fast by any means. So I wish it was this fast, because wouldn't that be nice, right? It sure looks nice when it's done, so it is worth taking the time to add just, the little details in, and these are definitely some fun little details. Okay, so take a minute and do that. Add in your stitching. All right. So then I'm just going to go ahead and put these mats on with some repositionable adhesive. That way, if I need to adjust them when I do have photos ready for this layout, I can easily do so. But otherwise, that is our layout for today. So a lot of personal choices in today's layout. Okay, so please don't feel like you need to try to follow what I did. It is hard to teach something that's abstract like this. So I hope that you are able to follow along and experiment and create your own Christmas tree using some of your scraps. It's been so nice to have you with me today, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. We only have a couple more of these 12 layouts to go. So Merry Christmas and have many more creative moments. Enjoy!